So we're going to jump into the Queen's Gambit and contrast it with the London. So we have D4, D5. Now the Queen's Gambit is defined by C4, right? Which is not actually played in the Queen's Gambit miniseries because Beth plays E4. So E6, this is Queen's Gambit declined, right? And now you can see the most popular variations. So knight C3 or knight F3, basically. Let's say you go knight C3, this is classical. And then black, knight F6. And now, interestingly, if we compare it to the London, so London, we go bishop F4, right? And that's actually a good move. Here, you can go bishop G5. You look at a lot of Capablanca games, Alekhine games from the early 1900s. You'll see this exact same position. Really, it was popularized like late 19th and early 20th century, the Queen's Gambit. You can also play, just modestly with something like, you could even play E3 at some point. Usually that's against a Slav. You could do this. But like, for example, let's say they go C6. That's a Slav. You can literally play E3 right now. That's legit too. But then you're not getting your bishop out, but it'll come out later. But it's very flexible. So you can see the main move is knight F3, knight F6, knight C. So this is the basic idea. Now, of course, it begs the question, what happens if black takes the pawn, right? I've actually done this a lot with black, this Queen's Gambit accepted, but you better know what you're doing with black because white can just take over the center immediately with E4 if they want. Of course, black is ready. Black has to be ready, and they have strong responses. Like there's E5. I've actually studied Wrublewski a lot. If you want to know the Queen's Gambit accepted, study Wrublewski, Russian GM, not really active anymore, but he did this a lot, and he showed how strong it was. I think he also did knight F6 a lot too. I like knight F6. So it's kind of like an Alekhine's defense with E4, knight F6, but you're doing it against the Queen's Gambit. So the idea is knight F6, E5. You see some Karpov games with white. You'll probably see it down here. Let's see. We have a Carlsen win with white. Grishuk, a lot of Grishuk. Probably see Karpov too. I guess not as recent, but I've seen him do that as well. And then you just kick the bishop away and you go like this and so forth. Yeah, there we go. There's some Karpov games. So this is interesting, black has some pressure on D4, but white has that space advantage. Because see, because of that capture on C4, we have two pawns in the middle and they really advance. So seems super attractive for white, but keep in mind, black is going to put pressure on your center, just like in many other openings against D4, like a Grunfeld. That's a common one where they put pressure on D4. So you have to know that the moment you're moving your E pawn twice, you have to know that black's going to put pressure on you. So again, you could play it really modestly. Even E3 or knight F3 now. So for example, knight F3, a lot of people who do this against me, they just play E3 right now. And this shows you that the Queen's Gambit is not actually a true gambit. It's like a pseudo gambit where you give away the pawn. Now, King's Gambit is on the other side of the board, right? So we have E4, E5, F4. Now that's pretty much a true gambit because if black wants to keep the pawn, they probably can't. It's going to be hard to get it back. It's more speculative, really popular in the 19th century, right? And then we started getting into more like Italian game and Roy Lopez. That's another matter, right? That's for another day. But anyway, just to show you the two different sides with E4, E5, F4, a true gambit. And then if you want to play it on the queen side, D4, D5, C4, more positional, because obviously you're not going to be closer to the king like an E4 and F4. So it's more positional, playing more in the center and maybe the queen side, but you can certainly cascade over to the king side. Point is you're fighting for the center right away. And again, like in a London, you're not. In a London, you're going bishop F4, maybe knight F3 first, bishop F4. You're not doing anything with the center. You're just getting the pieces out. Because in a London, you're probably going to end up with C3 and E3. It's just solid and comfortable. But with the Queen's Gambit, it's very confrontational immediately. You're striking, and again, you're saying, go ahead and take me. And like I mentioned about this line with E3, going back to the bishop takes back, they can't really hold it. So if they don't hold it, let's say they go E6, you just get your pawn back, and it's very common. Again, slight edge for white. Black's fine, but white has that. See, white has those two pawns in the middle, and they have the two central pawns, and one of them is actually occupying one of the four central squares, and we would also own the E5 square diagonally with the pawn, and the knight can come in, right? Now, as for black, it's much more modest, but black will need to punch back. That's the idea. See Anand games like this too. Anand has played with black like this. But you'll see all top players that pretty much tried this at some point. Definitely a lot of Capablanca. If you like Capablanca, you'll see him do this a lot with white, with knight C3 and bishop G5. Now, I botched this the other day because I forgot the move order, but you also have the Catalan. So for example, let's say we have knight f3, knight f6. A completely different way of playing it is g3. And we're going to just modestly bring out our bishop and castle. So still queen's gambit, but with the bishop here. But keep in mind that bishop's going to breathe fire. So if black ever accepts it, we're going to have a really open diagonal. And just to show you quickly, and then we can delve into specific lines that you guys are interested in for the international duel class. After pawn takes, after the more modest line of knight f3. Let me see, which one was it? It was, no, sorry, it was just the immediate. We could do it afterwards. I meant the line where we play e3 and take it back. So the question of what happens if black tries to hold it? Well, the only way to really hold it is b5, right? But it's not, because you go a4, they go c6. Let's say if they go b4, you just take, right? So let's say they go a6, that fails because we just take, and there's the pin. Can't take back, right? And then if they go c6, now you can definitely get it back. You just go, if you want, you go take, b3, because you see how there's the pin. So if they take, you just take with check. They have to give it back to you, basically. It gets very interesting. Again, computer same evaluation says about 0.3. So slightly better for white. Black is still fine. You can allow this, but white is clearly getting a really nice center. Take back, and you just see bishop takes. And you can see there are a lot of draws, but if anyone wins, it's really white. But only 19% of the time, and then black is hardly winning at all. But white just has that center, and black doesn't, right? So there's something else too, where it's like, I think it's like bypass. Can they do that now? Yeah, they can bypass, but look at this. So black has the pawns, the connected passed pawns, hopefully coming for them. But look at the winning percentage for white, because white's just going to take over. Apparently, that's really strong. C5. Now we want to maybe check them and grab the pawn, just win a pawn. So they go a5. Then it looks like 95 is really good. So basically winning out of 3 games with 95, 2 wins and a draw for white. It's not bad at all, right? Bishop d7. What do we have here? Queen c7 was played. And then queen f3 won, bishop b5. And the computer prefers that move. So it gives you a sense. Bishop b2, bishop d2. Well, if you go bishop d2, you're threatening to take. So the point is you have this huge center and space on the queen side. You have pressure, and these guys are not going anywhere. You might win them if they're not careful. So let's see. Oh, wait a second. No, that's bad, because then they have this move. Wait, what is, and if you take back, then they have this. We don't want that. Wait, so it looks like you're supposed to play bishop here, bishop out. You can attack the rook moves, and just keep the pin and so forth. But you can see the computer's giving it as if white's over a pawn up, and white is just really squeezing. See, I mentioned the 95 grip in there on the dark squares, and you pin the knight, which helps enhance your control of dark squares, right? If you go as castles, boom, you hop into the lights, use the dark square control of the knight, boom, you're in here. That's pretty uncomfortable. That's a fork. And he has to give up some material to give you the exchange. And just to show you, there's one trap which is kind of cool to know that white has. So there's one line where you don't go knight f3 and you go e3 right away, which looks more modest, right? But it's actually pretty cool, because now if b5 is played, so you do a4 again. Let's see if you guys can find the trap. You go away from it. Okay, so after a4, c6. Can you guys figure out what the trap is here? Now, we only have one master game like this, because most masters know. Well, 2365 beat a 2154. So 2100 didn't know the line. How does white win this position? This is the benefit of the knight having not developed to f3 yet. What do you guys think there is? Pause. I'll pause the recording. You guys can pause as well. Oops, not this one. Get a pause. So what do you think? We have to, so if we just take it, we can take it, we can go knight c3, then they bypass.
Is it b4?
What's that?
Is it b4?
It has to be, you have to be doing something more exploitative. B4 doesn't really threaten anything, right?
b3?
This is basically a win or a huge advantage for white, particularly if black falls for it. I'll give you a hint. Look at the rook in the corner. How do you reach the rook in the corner?
Oh, is it G3?
What G3? Pawn G3?
Yeah.
Interestingly, that would be like the Catalan where you fianchetto, but we want something quicker. Again, you have to, if you don't exploit this, they'll just like cover everything with bishop here. Interestingly, a6 fails. That's the line where you take. But if the bishop's on b7, so let's say you don't do anything like, um, let's say, let's say, for example, you fail to take it and you just went like this. Well, then once bishop b7 is played, funny enough, this transposes to something else. But now that doesn't do anything. Take, the bishop just takes back and it's even, right? And black is up the pawn currently, but remember, there are always those tricks with b3. And when they, to get to b5, there's always stuff like that. But in this case, this just fails. So a4 is played. Again, they can't go a6 because you get the pawn and then you get the other pawn, and that's bad. You might get all the pawns over there. So they go c6, trying to hold on to that. They're getting greedy. There's a line in the Scandinavian called the banker's line, or someone calls it the banker's line. We're just trying to hold on to those pawns like bean counting. So in this case, though, we want to exploit the rook. Okay, so Wendy, this is too slow. G3 is too slow. You have the right idea. Okay, let's be more urgent. How do we urgently tear open to get to that rook?
Just
Take the
take?
pawn.
Yeah, you just take, and then if he takes back, you win.
Yeah,
Try to visualize it from here. Why does it win when they take back? Get your tactical goggles on.
I see it.
What is it, John?
So if the pawn takes, you just bring the queen out to
Yeah, you see it,
F3.
Wendy?
Queen out where?
Think about it. Think about the targets. What are you trying to reach?
Oh my God. Okay, I see it. What on earth? Wait, but what?
They can't do anything about it. Well, they have to cough up their knight, basically. They have to their best chance is to cough up the knight, check, and then block with the bishop. And then you just go somewhere else, like here or whatever.
That is
Go
so
back.
crazy. Oh my God, that is so crazy.
So maybe, but that means that if they fall for it, see again, they get too greedy for the pawn. Ironically, then they end up losing pawns anyway, right? So they should
So
just
wait, so if they push
they
and
should just bypass
you
it
take,
and give it to you. Then they've overextended themselves a bit over here. Get your
if
bigger.
so in that same line, if they push, you take, is their best move to not take back?
Exactly. Yeah, but then they're just worse. So once they realize, if they're like, oh crap, I missed that, then their best move is apparently like bishop b7, but you just keep taking stuff, right? You just take this. And then if they take, oh, like, oh, I'm gonna get you too, but of course you take back with check. They block, and then you just probably bring out your knight.
Oh
And now
God.
we are the ones up. We're up a pawn now, right? We are we? Yes, we are, because they're missing three, we're only missing two. And you just have a great position, right? And you still have pressure on the A pawn. You can use the C file, the half open A file. Yeah, and you're about to castle, and they've got some ways to castle. All right, you just castle now. It really likes this move again. With this move too. Let's say here, let's go e6. Oh, that's nasty. Bishop comes in. So you can put a lot of pressure on them through the queen side. That's the thing. But you can see this is like a great result out of the Queen's Gambit. And the cool thing is you will get this stuff a ton, particularly at the club level, or like let's say, 1,000, 12, 13, 14, 1,500 and below too. Say you play this at, let's say you know it and you're like, whatever, playing against 800s and stuff, like they won't know what to do, right? And but you could play it at every level. That's the thing. The higher levels probably won't fall for this one. But yeah, but at the lower level, they absolutely will. Um, but let's say they do what's the other way. That's if they try and get real greedy, right? But like the knight f3 line, like knight f3, b5. Again, you're going a4 right away. They can't go a6. If they want to hold, they got to. If they push, you just take c4. If they go c6, and you have a few ways to go. The most popular among GMs is that as masters is actually e3, and there's just nothing they can do about that. They could just watch. They just watch you here because you got e6. You go take, take, and then the trick is b3. Remember, because you're striking here. So anytime they take, you just take. You guys got it? That's the trick. So point is they can't really hold it. And so you just end up with this really attractive position. I mean, the thing is if you play like e4 and they play e5 and they just hold it symmetrically, and a lot of times it's really hard to progress. But you can see and if you play King's Gambit, it's incorrect. Queen, it's speculative, right? Not totally correct. But if you play a Queen's Gambit, it's completely correct, and you just get these really comfortable positions a lot of times where you just get more center. Now, keep in mind, this is the accepted, right? If they give you that center, so it's like and we looked at B4, it doesn't help them. You just have a beautiful center that's going to push eventually. If they do take you, you just take back, you castle, and beautiful position, right? But just the fact that you have that center, that nice pawn chain means a lot. And don't forget, once you like finish your development, you can start, you get your bishops out this way or something. You can start pushing your pawns too, right? So that's where so it's a modest looking center, but remember, you have two central pawns and one of them is already in the middle. And I mentioned the Sicilian too, just to contrast it real quick. So if we have like E4, C5, black is going to get two central pawns, knight f3, D6, D4 takes, knight takes. Look, black already has two pawns. Yasser Seirawan argues, all right, this is really good for black. Black has an advantage. Black has an extra central pawn, not a wing pawn. But of course, you have to use it. And as you see, black doesn't have any in the middle yet. White only has one central pawn of the two E and D pawns. Black has two, but they're not in the middle. You see what I mean? Has to be activated, right? You have to use that potential energy, sort of potential of the pawn has to realize itself, right? So, but that's similar because you have two. But now, what if black goes E6 and D5? Then he gets rid of one of white's central pawns, maybe, and then he's the one with the central pawn. So it's very similar in that sense that we're doing the Queen's Gambit and they're taking, and we can just take over either way. We have two central pawns. This is the most aggressive use. So in contrast, we're just immediately occupying two out of the four central squares, and they have none. And then we're ready to either push or just have that control. Does that make sense? Just to show you, though. Does that make sense, though, in general, the idea of stripping the center, lure it away, probably get it back anyway, and you take over the center. Does that make sense?
Yep.
With dynamism. See, does that make sense to you as well? Dynamics, shove the pawns. What do you let me know if you have any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main concept, really. And then now, just to show you the Wróblewski thing, I've seen Wróblewski go E5 a lot too. And there's some crazy lines here. Like I'll show you, I'll go back to the opening book again. The McDonald's something variation. McDonald defense. Okay, so E5. So what you do is because if they take you, you're going to take your queen and pull your king out of the way. And keep in mind, they already have a pawn. So they could give you a pawn too. It's not a big deal. So you go knight f3. This gets really cool, like really cool attacks. There's a nice Iranian game with white. I think we'll see. So pawn takes pawn. You ignore the D pawn, you take this way, right? And now maybe they're like, hey, I really want to hold on to that pawn on D4. What do we have? 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So if they get greedy, again, the greed is not good here for black here, right? If they go C5, look, black has no pieces out. We both have, they have two pawns, we have one pawn. They have no minor pieces developed. We have two. Oh, this is a Sargisian game, also from Armenia. I thought there was a Iranian game as well. I think that's a different game. It's like an exchange stack. So 95, bishop e6, bishop takes, f takes, queen h5 check. Yeah, there's an exchange, g6, knight takes g6. So if he takes back, you just win the exchange, right? So he goes knight f6, queen tucks back. He ultimately does take it because it's so strong. And then white just wins the exchange. I mean, it gets a little murky, like the knight takes that, 3, 4, 5. So black has a pawn still, but white's up in exchange, and white ends up winning. So you can just see, though, how aggressive this can get. So c5 fails, right? They're supposed to play knight c6. Still scores pretty nice. So a lot of these games, like not like overwhelming. There are a lot of draws, but still, it's just comfortable. And you're getting like 29% for white, 12%. What if they misplay it? In some lines, you have 50% versus, well, that's with queen b3. Computer likes that. Either one prefers castles a little bit. Let's look at this line, though. How many wins that led to? Well, it's obvious you attack f7, right? So they check you. Sure, why not? You can block. And then they can bring out the queen and guard f7. And then again, look at this. I mean, out of 9 games, looks like they're winning 4 out of 9, and the remaining are draws. So not so bad. Drea, the super. Oh, Anna Zatonsky, former U.S. champ. It must be probably women's U.S. championship. They're both champions. So castles, knight g7, and look at that. You get the sense, right? There's like this massive initiative brewing up, and they can't take it because they lure them away, and you get f7. Yeah, you get the sense. Just really nice attack for. Funny enough, though, this is almost transposing into positions of e4, e5. We have like e4, e5 positions, and you like shuck away the pawn over here, and you just shove your pawn. Like Morphy games are like that. So you can see just because it starts with d4 doesn't mean it can't be similar to other openings. Because point is you're just taking over the center, and so similar themes happen. What else would there be? Oh, like lines where you keep where the tension is remained or like is maintained. Black can take on c4, that breaks the tension, and then white takes over the center. But maybe black wants to keep the tension and hold that their line there and keep a pawn in the middle, right? Then we get to apply pressure. And again, this is the kind of pressure that you won't get in a London system. So like knight f6. Now you could give up the pressure with takes, that's another matter. But let's just say again, the Capablanca stuff that we see with bishop g5 and Alekhine. This is just, we can show you orthodox. I'll show you orthodox by black. Karpov does this all the time with black. So let's say you just play something really comfortable, like knight f3. And again, they could take and almost transpose this into a Queen's Gambit accepted. Let's say they just castle. We go e3. Now no more Gambit at all. Now you're just ready. Now if black is gonna take, they may as well wait for white to bring out the bishop, right? Bring out the bishop, they take, then the bishop takes back and makes them waste a move, right? So let's just say this is orthodox defense, something like this. See, Queen's Gambit declined orthodox defense. Now it's interesting that you'll see Queen C2 and Rook C1 as the best moves. Like I said, it's advanced, right? Because you know that if you come out once, right away they're going to take. So what you do is you kind of postpone that and you say, all right, I know that I have a solid center and you're not going to get to my king right away. You have to know that, right? So you can afford to make moves like this that don't castle yet. You don't prep castling yet, right? So now Orthodox usually have like b6 in a lot of cases. Let's say, apparently it's not really that good here. Let's see why. You can often do this, but apparently it's really bad here. And now whenever they play b6, you'll often take, because sometimes you'll worry about the bishop developing out this way. But now you're not, because they've already played b6. If they want to go that way, weaken themselves. Fischer beat Spassky like that in round 6. Did the exact same structure. Bishop comes out. And again, you guys could just see how comfortable this is. Very similar to the comfort of a London in terms of your knight's out, your bishop out. In a London, your bishop's just here. But here's the difference. In a London, you're on c3. You've already gone c4. You've traded off the c for d, meaning effectively what you've done is you've punched a hole on e6, you see? Because that regenerated itself, like respawned on d5. So effectively, you've really traded the c for the e pawn, but that gives you 2 against 1. Black has met you in the middle, but still, they only have 1. Sometimes people like play for f3 and e4 later, like you try and use that central pawn. But see, right now, again, you're just very comfortable. So bishop b7, and finally we castle, and look, we got 45% black, white, and 23% for black. So the stats are just looking good. Very, very just nice edge. So c5 is normal. Black strikes back. And let's see. Bishop f5 is kind of cool. And you start to see, you're using that space, putting pressure. If they want to bring the rook out, you're like intimidating them from doing that. Okay, why don't they kick the bishop, right? If they kick the bishop, let's see. Do we win something? We might win the d pawn, actually. Do we win that? I'm not sure. We take, and if the knight takes, take, I think we win the d5 pawn. No, he takes back with the queen. That's awkward, right? If they take back with something else, you just take the d5 pawn, see? Because you remove the knight. And then you just win a free pawn. So you have to watch out. That means that they're going to have to take back with the queen. And yeah, it's just looking at like queen a4, just natural development, like queen a4. Say they get out of the way, and then just bring out your rook. And again, just you get a feel for this. It's just comfortable, right? Very comfortable position. Not to mention, like, objectively, we're ahead in development. We have 2 rooks out, and also what's going on with that bishop on b7? See that? That's objectively, we have the 2 knights versus a knight and a bishop. You see how it favors us in terms of our minor pieces? For now, probably it'll be enduring. You guys see why? What's going on with that bishop on b7? It's awful, right? You guys see that?
Let me see.
Look at that bishop. He's not going to see the light of day. You have to sacrifice his pawn to unleash himself. But the thing is, you're not going to let him, right? So, for example, let's just look at it like, okay, sample line. Okay, nice e5. Sure, attack the queen. Well, there you go. queen blockades the pawn. Okay, let's bother her again. Oh, that's cool. You can take on d5. Because if they take you, oh, that's terrible. You take a check. They got to move and they just win the knight.
Hmm.
You got two knights against the bishops. That means that they would have to take it probably. And then you just take, okay, they can bother your queen. So what? You just move away a little bit. And now you're ahead of pawn. If they want to go there, that's bad because this is a good example of getting two rooks for a queen. So you have 10 for 9, plus you have a pawn. That's like 11 for 9. It's saying like, make a little luft. And those are really good rooks right there. They can't do anything to you. But anyway, the idea is you should blockade the pawn. Usually you'll blockade with the knight, actually. Let's say you don't feel like it. Let's say you blockade with the queen. Like, let's say you swarm somewhere else. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's like Bobby Fischer. That's what he did. He went queen a3 against Spassky, and he pinned it on the diagonal. So rook comes out, and then now there's the best move, it looks like, knight d4. And you have a great square for your knight. Rooks are wonderfully posted, right? And again, London, you'd be on d2. Now you're on c3. Positional pressure on d5, enduring pressure. Bad bishop blocked by its own pawn. And white has an edge, half a pawn up for white. White just has a comfortable slight advantage. And you try to milk that, right? Just try to keep growing it. So you can see it's a really attractive opening, right? A lot of merits to it. Now, why don't I show you? Let's finish with, two different things. One is an earlier exchange variation against like a Slav, for example, more symmetrical but interesting. And then the Catalan, we could look a little bit more into the Catalan, which is an interesting opening too. And the bishop f4, a few things actually, because again, similar, just to show you the similarities to London. So let's do the Slav one, the exchange. So for example, let's say they can play a Slav at any point, right? Like let's say let's say they do it right away, though, as an example. So after c6, there's let's say knight c3, knight f6. You can just take whenever you want, right? So you have the take. I think here it's bishop f4. So again, similar to the London in terms of the piece placement. Again, you have just a little bit more aggressive, right? So you have knight c6. I think it's e3. Now e6 is common. I think stopping the knight from coming in and the bishop. Just go like that. Can do bishop b2, bishop. Apparently, it's funny enough that scores better than modest bishop b2 than bishop b3. Rook c1's natural too. Let's see rook c1, bishop out. Now the question is, how does white do better? It looks very, very natural, right? Very, very for black as well. Looks like it's symmetrical nearly. Let's see how white can try to squeeze something. See, the computer gives a tiny edge. And again, that's with a6. If they don't go a6, you have like bishop b5, and they may not go a6, right? You have bishop b5, knight e5, a lot of pressure. Maybe you give them a backward c pawn or something. But assuming they play it correctly, they do something like this. And we're just scoring like a tiny bit better. Topalov, he had to draw. There's Aronian. He had to win. And like h3, we have knight a4. I'm going to come in there. So pressing a tiny bit. So this is, if you want to do the exchange variation, if you want to play real quietly and just press for a minuscule edge, you can do that. But again, let's say they don't know the line as well. I think a6 is what you're supposed to, what theory shows you're supposed to do. Let's say they go, I guess, e6. That's another move. So if they go e6, now what would it be? I thought there was some bishop b5 stuff. Yeah, I mean, look at bishop b5. It scores really, really nicely. What can they do? Bishop e7. Funny enough, I thought there was something that's pretty good here. I mean, like, let's see, knight f3, castles. Yeah, see, funny enough, it doesn't score well. Computer likes it tad for white. It doesn't score well for white in practice. Let's see, h3. It's not bad, obviously. Apparently wants to move it twice. Let's say queen b6. Why not? Yeah, again, I mean, it's not a huge advantage or something, but look at the bishop on d7. We always work against that whenever they have this pawn chain. So again, very minuscule edge, but you can play something like this. And we saw the capture variation in the other one. There are other capture variations like the bishop takes on f6, and then you may or may not take on d5. So you play for the knights against the bishops. Okay, so then we also have the bishop f4 variation and the Catalan, right? So I mentioned the Catalan first. So let's say e6. something like standard like this, and then we can go G3 right away. They do take a lot of time. So let's just say that, oh, this is interesting, the bishop B4 check line. Let's just say, again, just to show you a modest, just if black plays normal stuff, how you can try and play this. And yeah, they do take it a lot. Let's say they take, you can go, there's a 95 line, there's a queen C2 line. This is pretty standard stuff. It gets crazy, actually. You can see some really weird stuff from here. So there's a cool line with knight c6, right? And black voluntarily triples their pawns. I mean, they can do something normal, like again, like c5. Let's see, just take it. Say they try and get it back, and you snatch this one. And this is a good example of that, again, that enduring pressure. Let's say the bishop takes. See this bishop here? It's going to be really hard to develop the bishop from d7, right? And just really comfortable. Got to worry about the knights coming in, the bishop f4 stuff, queen b3. Again, computer tends to give white a tiny edge, and white scoring definitely better in practice. Queen gets attacked, and you could counter, but I don't know. I'd kind of want to go queen b3 as well. This seems to do well. Queen e7, and then, yeah, queen b3. That's fine. And we have good piece placement too. Now, as for the triple, I should have to show you the triple pawns one. So knight c6, you often will take with your bishop. You give away that good bishop protecting your king. So take. And you are supposed to take, again, slight edge. Again, a lot of this is slight edge. It depends. And this is if black really knows the lines, right? If they don't know the lines, you get a big edge. If they do, slight edge. Not so bad, right? Kramnik played this against Carlsen in 2013. There's actually a cool line, a cool game where Carlsen beats Kramnik with a head jog, worth looking at. There's another, we see a lot of Aronian games, interestingly. He likes this kind of stuff. So let's see, the main line would be queen over, hit the knight, trade it down. So now we have opposite colored bishops. Okay, it doesn't really matter. Queen a2, queen a4, queen c2 rather. Okay, punch back. Again, if they know what they're doing, they're going to try something like this. Takes, queen takes. What are we at? We are missing 2 pawns. They're missing 3 pawns. Black gets pretty good activity though. Opposite colored bishops. I'm a little confused as to why you'd want to go to d3. Let's see what the line is here. Let's say they go after your queen with like rook fd8. You just try to trade queens. Okay, that's it. Now keep in mind, if they do trade, it's opposite colored bishops, a little bit drawish, but we're not just to opposite colored bishops and nothing else. That tends to be very drawish. So we still have other pieces on the board, and hey, white is up a pawn. So the computer's giving almost a point up for that. Black has more development. You can see those triple pawns are probably going to fall eventually. That's just an interesting line, right? That's available. Again, you don't have to go 95. Queen c2 is the most popular, actually. And then we have like a6. Interestingly, even if you play a4, okay, let's say they go like bishop d7. If you take, they're going to play b5 anyway if they want, because you can't take, and then your rook's hanging and your queen's hanging. So if they go b5, you just tuck your queen back anyway. And then they might want to, that's kind of interesting if they try to challenge you on the diagonal. That's a nice place for your bishop. Let's say they go after your bishop. There are interesting lines where you actually leave your bishop there, just to show you all the rich ideas, right? Like you can literally go 95. You let them take on f4, then you snatch c6 with tempo on a8. Now you get a tempo on the queen. Okay, they can toss an h3 check. It doesn't matter. They can toss, okay, we're just going to take it. And we're up, we got 2 knights for a bishop. We're up a piece. So let's say they don't do that. They can go there. Knight b4. Still take on c6, right? Let's say they take on here. Take d8. They take a1. And we can, let's see, desperado, because we're gonna get the rook anyway. What do we have here? 4 for 4. What are we at? We are at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're up a pawn with a good position. So nice bishop pair there. So it gets pretty sharp, right, on the diagonal. Obviously, you can see this, b5. I mentioned b5, b4. Those are weakening moves for black. As you can see, bishop c6 is most popular. Let's be fair and give him that. Bring a bishop out. Funny enough, about the same score. So let's do bishop f4 in that same spirit. I think, are we going to see knight d5? Let's just look at that. Interestingly, whenever they try that. In this case, you could ignore it. But let's say let's say you just tuck back. So a lot of times you end up, especially with b5, a lot of times you sneak into a5, your bishop. Okay, let's say knight comes out. And we do have that move. Comes out. Yeah, why not? Put some pressure over here. We got to get the other rook out, of course. Queen gets away from the bishop. Someone went queen c2 and drew. I mean, queen b3, rather. Yeah, I don't want to let him in. Gotta go this way then. And this ended up with a draw, but slightly more comfortable for white. Again, white still has that center, some pressure. I think did white have anything better here? How about bishop g5 so I don't get bothered by the knight? What are they gonna do there? Bother the queen, she tucks back. And again, you're seeing a lot of these lines are like plus 0.2, plus 0.3, literally 2, 3, 4. So again, it's always a slight edge if you know what you're doing for white. Get it out of the way for now. It's okay. We'll come back. Knight c3, and then we have this. See, it's very common. You see knight bd2, but not, you're going to come forward, right? We put pressure on the bishop. So they tuck it away. Now we got a good winning percentage here. And there's that c5 square. Can't go b6 to stop you. You're going to take c6. So that looks pretty nice. 2 wins for white out of this position. Queen d5. Someone took on Biliovsky lost, strong player. I'm not sure if it's the same Biliovsky. Well, he was active much earlier than 2021, so I'm not sure if it's the same one. So let's see. Let's say this happens. So they go here, bring out the rook, and we end up with just a nice setup in that c5 square. What is this? What happens here? Knight takes, knight f takes. Oh, you get g5, and what, do you take c7 or something? That gets really murky. Back to c1 again. But if she takes, then you have really nice doubling of the rooks, just great piece placement. And again, we always see that pressure on the diagonal of the Catalan. So Catalan is really rich opening, right? A lot of interesting ideas. And you can see that black knows what they're doing. They'll probably try and challenge your bishop, or they'll do that weird line where they triple their pawns. Not a bad line. There's a cool win by, I think, Wesley So, where he wins with the tripled pawns. You got B file, D file action. And now lastly, let's go back to this to the bishop f4 line without the exchange. Again, just to show you something that feels a lot like a London, if you play the London. Only difference is in a London, the pawn's on c3 and the knight's on d2, right? So bishop f4, and let's see. Well, c5, computer says minus 0.1. Let's check this out. In practice, it doesn't really matter. It's all even, right? But if white knows what they're doing, they can press. Now, let's see. It's interesting, the differential between knight f3 and e3. Well, let's look at this one. It scores much better. And they can grab that pawn. We take back. Interestingly, they don't have e5 now with that bishop here. If you were on g5, they would be able to, but it would be a little sketchy even there because they're not ready to push too much yet. They have to develop. And interestingly, again, like we see a huge difference, but there are only two, sample size of 2 with knight f3. Computer doesn't like it, much worse. But queen a4, much bigger sample size and still slightly better. Again, a lot of this is slight advantage. But keep in mind, if you play e4, e5, if black knows what they're doing, you're really not going to get much more than a slight advantage either. I mean, they could play symmetrical. They could play a Petrov and Russian defense, knight f3, knight f6. It's pretty hard to get anything out of those two. So, and again, fundamentally, you're taking away a lot of their center. So you're putting a lot of you either provoke them to take, you just put a lot of pressure on d5, right? So what's the best line? Okay, so Abu had a few, Abusatara, Abu. You have a lot of these, a lot of strong players playing this. So bishop goes to c5, take on d. Again, minuscule advantage for white. Castles. White scoring a little bit better. Tuck your knight back. Got to finish developing. This one for black. Let's see what happened. There must be an improvement. See, there must be an improvement for white over what happened. Same with rook d1. It doesn't like that. Let's just develop. Okay, attack the queen. there's that blockade again of the D pawn. So we're just playing against the Isolani, the isolated D pawn, right? And you maybe go bishop f3, put a lot of pressure. And we obviously are going to finish our development. It's castle. And again, plus 0.3, like usual, right? Just as usual. Knight c4. What's going on here? Let's check this out. So we counter him. Okay, they snatch this. They snatch the B pawn. Is that going to work? They go back. Okay, that's interesting. They can insert this move to guard the B pawn with tempo. They can escape. And then we're like, okay, just go back and attack your D pawn. Rook comes out. Interesting. So we have 5 pawns against 6 pawns, but a lot of pressure, and we can probably double the pawns. Let's see, where do they even go? I mean, what is it giving? 96? Take. Oh, we end up getting it, see? Well, we end up with, there's your edge, because you end up trading everything, and, just a slightly better pawn structure. They have a messed up king side. That's worth a lot. It's really rigid. They got to worry about losing the F pawn and so forth. And we have a nice bishop. Knight can hop around, but we invade, and I think I'm happy with the white pieces here, right? Better pawn structure. Knight's not bad though. The knight's hopping around, so you got to make a loop for your king and so on. So it's a pretty close game. 0.1 plus 0.1 it's giving, right? So shift the rook somewhere. I like making a loop, right? Probably you can go h3. And again, just a little, as I said, better pawn structure for white. Nice bishop. We could probably kick the knight away. I don't know about that actually. He's gonna hop around, but like maybe you get to play like f3, e4. Obviously bring your other rook out, go after b6, things like that. So yeah, we're just really seeing this theme of constant pressure, slight advantages. It's kind of the nature of it. But remember, this is based on good play by black. And we saw earlier on a lot of those lines, especially like in lines where they just take right away, and you play e4 and you could just plow through if they don't know what they're doing. If they really know what they're doing, maybe you're slightly better. And if they don't, you crush them, right? So that's not a bad bargain, especially, again, at the club level. It's basically a risk-free way to play. It's not a real gambit. It's like a pseudo gambit as opposed to a king's gambit or a Smith-Morra gambit or something. Those are actually losing a pawn, right? For dynamic compensation. And in a king's gambit, central compensation. Because again, you do get, well, for example, f4 takes, knight f3. Again, they could play g5 and just hold it, kind of similar to b5, but they actually are holding on to the pawn, right? But still, you have 2 central pawns, they have 1. So similar idea, just more cutthroat, and you've moved your f pawn, which means your king's more open, but black is playing risky too with g5. And John, you know all about the g pawn moves with the Grob. So yeah, it's just it's the same idea, but it's a little safer because it's on the queen side. You're not opening your king at all. And of course, some people think, oh, I'm moving. No, you can easily block that. And you're going to castle pretty quickly. But interestingly, sometimes you don't even need to. I'll give you one example too. Let's say they take, and it's knight f3, knight f6, e3. Okay, so let's say they just let you take back, right? Something like this. So a lot of times you can actually keep your king in the center because you have more central pawns. Just imagine, how on earth is black going to get to this king? It's going to take them forever, right? They have to get through your center. Like I said, the check doesn't do anything. You just block with something, right? How are they getting to your king, right? They're not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why there are those lines where you kind of, I don't know if I see him right here, but the rook c1 stuff where you like, well, that was actually before you even took on c4. We're just waiting for them to take you and kind of provoking that. Just go knight, the bishop was out in f4 or g5, knight's out, you go rook c1, queen c2, and then eventually castle. And no matter what, we're always comfortable. A lot of times we play against the isolated d pawn. One final example. What if we get the isolated d pawn ourselves? That's also pretty good for us because we have the first move. So we could tend to do that with more initiative. So for example, like how would this come about? Maybe knight c6 and queen e2 is very popular to go rook over and they take. We go rook d1 maybe. We could do this. Main line is here and then we just take back. Now we have an Isolani ourselves. And once again, plus 0.3, 36% or 16%, a lot of times it's like whatever, 30 versus 20 something or whatever, but scoring pretty significantly higher here among master games. Let's see Lee chess overall. Wow. I think I had it for 2200 2200 plus in slower games. So you see it does really well in Lee chess. I mean, 37% still for black, but 50% for white. They both are scoring more, but white's getting a pretty nice winning percentage. Of course, you're gonna have fewer draws online and quicker games than long games in person. So yeah, we nice C3, for example. Why not? Knight A5, bishop back, B6. Queen E5. That's kind of a funky looking move. No one's really people. I don't know. Let's see what's up with that. What's going on with this move? Okay, kick your queen. Go to G5. I guess this is a thing. Bishop B7. And then the other moves don't score as well, but Queen H4 1. Just trying to create, it looks like a crude attack, but the computer says it's slightly better. It won for someone. Let's see what happens. Let's see how they won this. Bishop G5, Bishop E7. They went Bishop E4, also likes Bishop H6. It makes sense. Bishop E4, Rook C8, F4, Rook C4. Smash. That's a very common thing with the Isolani, is smash through. And again, you have the first move. So you're kind of there first, right? Just ignores it. Maybe you have like F5 ideas. Let's see what he does. Rook C6, shifts over to E1, takes the file, challenges the file, smash. There's your F5. And white has a huge attack all of a sudden. Probably got like a mating attack. We have to change. Maybe. Overloaded, Queen's overloaded, guarding both. She does take. We win the exchange. And then it doesn't say the rest here, but let's say they sack here, desperado. King takes, queen takes. Centralize the queen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have a exchange up for just a pawn. So messy situation, but can we just block? Yeah, it's fine. So there's you getting the Isolani, but where it works out pretty well. That's just a messy line, but gives you that. You don't have to play Queen E5. You could just play. Where do we have? I mean, I don't think a lot of people do that. I mean, they're saying knight moves. Let's say they blockade the pawn too. That's just one more thing. Queen centralizes. Let's say knight F6. I don't know about A3 is common. The thing about the Isolani is you want to target H7 and A3 stops knight B4. Let's see what we have here. Let's say they take, and then you have the, again, nice center, reinforced. Bishop comes out. There's that 8 looking at H7. You can go Queen E4, why not? Somebody want H4 and 1. Bring the reserves over. What about this? Let's just see this line. G6. That's not bad either. Yeah, I think white has initiative. Then now we have 0.5 instead of 0.3, right? But they also repaired the isolated pawn. Now in the Rubinstein's backward pawn game, he attacked it was like C6, D5, and he attacked the C pawn. But here, that's you can play C4 and get the hanging pawns. But white has really active development. So anyway, there are just a bunch of different ways to play it. And it's really rich. You got to study it. And I think that's one of the things about the London. So a lot of people might not play the Queen's Gambit because they don't want to learn all these different ideas. But here's the thing, you just pick one of them. So let's say you pick like for example, the classical bishop F4, like bishop G5. Now you have fewer things to memorize. And if you were to go for like the exchange lines, let's see, like C takes D5, E takes D5. You could just learn this. And again, you're slightly better, but you're not going to, that's the thing. There are fewer things going on here. So it's easier to memorize, but there's also fewer dynamics, right? So it's better probably keep the tension. This is actually interesting. There's a line where you take on F6. Last thing I'm going to show. And then you do something like this, and you just keep the tension. Sometimes you take, but you're willing to give up that bishop pair. Keep in mind that knight was guarding D5. And then you might get something like Queen B3 and you're enhancing the pressure. And if they play C6, well, look at that. You've given up a bishop pair. Their light squared bishop is awful. That's very common, right? So anyway, should give you a sense, and you could try these things out. If you really want to get something like the London system, you could play it with bishop F4 and just have more activity. better knight, more pressure on d5. There's so many things to explore. And if you do play in English with c4 and g3, well, you could end up playing d4 and transpose into the Catalan, which is the version of the Queen's Gambit. So hopefully you found it useful. And let me know if you have any questions about it.